I'm glad to meet you.
Me
My
too.
name is Valerie, but let's just call me Venus Val Power.
Venus Bell
Um,
Tower. I love that
mhm.
name. It's a pleasure to meet you.
I'm sharing an experience that I guess I realized that was different as a small child, but I didn't have anyone to talk to about it. Because I had a father who was very abusive. And there was a point in time that he convinced me that I was worthless. I had developed a lot of anger and rage, and we weren't allowed to touch the Christmas tree in our house. Only father could. So I'm looking at the tree, and he comes in the room and says, "Don't touch it, don't turn it on till I get back." Well, I sat there on the couch and I focused all my anger at the tree. The tree is an artificial tree. It does have electric lights, but none of them were connected to the wall. And in my mind, I said, I'd like to get rid of this tree. And as I looked at it, I saw flames start from the top to the bottom. And as I'm staring at the tree and I'm seeing the smoke, and my father returns to the room and assumes that I've used some combustible item to set up to light up the tree. So luckily he was close by to a fire extinguisher. He put the fire extinguisher to put out the tree, but then he used the same material on me. So I guess he maybe he knew I needed to be cooled off too. And that's when I first looked. I said I knew I had done this and I didn't know who to talk to. I was going to parochial school at that time, and I definitely couldn't tell the nuns or the religious brothers what had happened. And being growing up in New York City, great variety of all the religions of the world, and I turned to the Wiccans, and I said, I figured maybe a witch might be able to help me understand what was going on. And they're the ones that let me know, yes, your conscious has power. And you just didn't know that it was possible for you to do that. And then I met my husband in the military. He was a drill instructor, and he had not instructed me specifically, but we had met on the base there. And he was Buddhist, which really introduced me into meditation. Um, but why I felt comfortable with that was at the age of 17. I'm sorry, hit the table. I had a fall downstairs. And from this fall, I didn't realize how badly I was injured. And I had started bleeding and I didn't know exactly where. And finally, once we determined that, uh, um, I friend had carried me by car to the hospital, and their poor car was really messed up. I had lost half of my bodily fluid by the time I had arrived to the ER. Now, what I remember at the ER is the staff trying to talk to me, and I was so weak that I really couldn't speak, and I was having problems breathing. And I could look up and I could see a bag of blood being hang, and I saw IVs running, and I realized I have electrocardiogram running on my chest, and the sounds of the room started to go away. And at that moment, I was hurting, and I'm going, oh, I wish I could get. I couldn't speak up to tell him that I was in pain. Um, um, and the next moment, I am not in pain, but I'm looking at my body on the table. And I'm saying to myself, what happened to the pain? You just can't turn it off like that. What happened to the pain? And as I'm muttering that, I slowly begin to notice a mist come from my feet. It was like I was going into a warm, hot tub of water, and it rose slowly up my legs, up my body, over my face. And as it enveloped me, that's when I heard many whispers, soft whispers, though I couldn't see anyone. And I took a peek. I'm still see my body on the table and the staff working on it. And now I'm distracted by the sensation of a warm hug that I'm given. And I'm at that moment, that's when my fear of death disappeared. And I'm not worried about her, and I'm not worried about me. And I'm just so happy to know that there is more. I believe there was more up to that point, but I really now I know for sure there's more um, in this life. That there is another space that we share. Okay, after
Um,
uh,
just out of curiosity, so I mean, I noticed you referred to yourself in third person, and she was okay, or so. Did you feel sort of like a separation? Do you know what I mean?
was two images. There was the body, and then there was my consciousness, my spirit. So yeah, I talked about her, uh, um, my body, and that occasion, and then after I had an astral projection moment in my life. Um, I guess I'm about 28 years old, and I'm working in the military, and I'm living in single barracks. I'm not married yet, and um, I'm thinking about my cousin who is also in the military, but I didn't know exactly where he had been transferred to. And I went to sleep one night, and I'm tossing, I'm turning, I'm going like, I'm not going to sleep tonight. And a moment later, I feel myself lifting out of the bed. And it's another occasion where I'm looking back at my body and she's there. And I go, oh, well, maybe I'll go back to this warm, uh, uh, um, loving space that I went to before. And I look out the window. Uh, my conscience looks out the window, and I go through the wall. And I'm rising up. I'm looking down at the barracks. I'm looking down at the ground. I'm going like, how am I doing this? And then I start traveling as if I am an aircraft. And I don't know where I'm going, but I know I'm somewhere in the United States. I recognize that from maps. Well, I end up going from New Jersey to South Carolina. And then I'm looking at this military installation and I'm going, I've never been here. And I end up being attracted towards a window, and I go to look, think I'm going to look at the window from the outside, actually go through the window. And that's where I'm at, my cousin's bed. And I'm looking at him and I'm going like, gee, you look an awful lot like my cousin. And he's asleep. And I look around his room and then I recognize some of our family pictures. And I'm going like, wow, I'm really here. Why am I here? Don't want to end up here for the rest of my life. And I said, well, it's nice to know cousin, where you ended up. Uh, um, but am I going to be stuck here? And once I started to be concerned about that, now I'm being pulled back like a strong rubber band. And I'm traveling outside the building and I'm traveling over the grass and going over the property and coming back over my military installation. And I recognize where my building is. So once I'm over there, I focus at it. And then I come through the window and I see her still laying on the bed. And I go, well, let me just sit down next to her. And then from there, sitting next to her, I end up being back with her. Well, I look at the clock. When I first got in the bed, it's 11 o'clock. Now I look at the clock and it's 4:45. And I'm going like, I don't know what happened in that period of time. So I'm arguing with myself, maybe this is a dream, but it felt so, I had some sensation this time of air and temperature, which I didn't have in the other experience. And I didn't hear the voices that I had heard in the first experience. It was soft whispers, but it was many voices. I didn't hear that. I just heard the wind that I traveled and my cousin snoring, and then returned to my room and I talked to myself and I could hear myself move. So I could not wait till sunrise. As I said, I've got to call him. I mean, maybe this is just an extreme dream. So a couple hours passed and I called him. I said, you won't believe, I'm glad to see that you're in South Carolina. And I didn't know that you were going to be a mortuary death technician for the military. And he goes like, how do you know that? I didn't tell you that. I just got it. And I go like, because I was in your room and I described the room. And he's going like, oh yeah, that is accurate. And he says, how did you do that? I said, I don't know. He said, did you become a spy? And I said, no, I did not. I'm medical. And I said, what did you perceive of me? He said, I just thought of you that night. I thought I saw a glimpse of you at the foot of my bed. And in my own head, I said, well, I can't wait to contact uh, uh, Venus. I should tell her about my new assignment. That's all he knew until I called him.
Wow, that's incredible.
That was a pleasant experience. It was an
Yeah.
unexpected experience.
So prior to the exiting of your body that night, did you have any other symptoms that day? Did you feel any little electric impulses in your body or anything, or did you go through any sort of vibrational stage or loud noises prior to exiting your body?
No,
Nothing. It just kind of
no.
just happened spontaneously, right?
Yeah, that time
Yeah.
it was. I've been trying to do it again, and it hasn't happened. But that time was spontaneous, and I don't understand why just him. Uh, uh, why at that time? I wasn't in an extreme situation. He wasn't. He was very happy, so maybe he was broadcasting because he was happy he had the job he had, and
Hmm.
he was about to tell everybody the next day. And I got in to find out first. That's all I know about that.
I had a spontaneous sort of completely uncontrollable astral projection, similar to what
Mm-hmm.
you had. Not as exciting as yours, that's for sure, the first time. But very similar. Like it was not something that I tried to do. It was something I was not even familiar with at the time. It just kind of happened. But that's, I find that really interesting. So, and I'm also curious as when you were traveling, not that you would know, it clocked the exact speed, but do you have an idea, sort of approximately how fast you felt you were traveling at the time?
Well, at that point in time, I had been in and several aircraft, single wing, multi wing, helicopters, and jets. So I had a perception of speed, and but it was faster than I had been in any of those pieces of equipment because my traveling was blurred. By the time I focused in to see the Bridge of New York, and then I blinked, and now I'm seeing DC, and it was a blur. It was really fast.
Well, I had the same issue as you at first. I mean, well, it took me actually several years to even finally come to terms with the fact that I had an OBE, but because I mean, even seeing it on Oprah, maybe months after it happened, there was a guy
Mhm.
describing his experience, and I thought, wow, and I was just catching the tail end of this episode, but I heard enough detail to say, oh my goodness, like that's exactly what happened to me, and even after seeing that episode, I still didn't, I was still kind of in denial about it. I didn't think that would, that actually happened to me. Anyway, several years later, fast forward, I finally start trying to do this intentionally. And it was not easy. It took me a long time. And this is after years of meditating as well. But of course, it would have been probably a lot easier had I done a little more research and found out, certain techniques. But anyways, I was a do-it-yourselfer for astral projection. But it turned out in the end to be pretty spectacular.
The next experience that I had was now I'm it's in 1990, Desert Storm. Um, it's before the ground campaign started, but Iraq had shot some Scuds um, into at the Saudi-Kuwait border, and I am going to a barracks that was a warehouse that was taken over to have troops use it as their residence. Now, um, during this campaign, people used to tease me because they used to call me radar because before any missiles or any alarms would go off, I'd start putting my helmet on first, and I'd start putting my glasses on and be looking for it, and they go like, "Oh no, you're just being hyper. You're just being hyper." And I'd count to 10, and alarms would go off. So again, this day, I want to go into this barracks because I want to get some cigarettes. So just before I go in there, I get my senses tingling, and I start putting my helmet on. And I'm going, there's an alarm going to go off. And by the time I count down from 10, boom, the barracks is hit. I'm thrown off my feet. I broke my eyeglasses, which is really hard because they make those things really strong. And I expected my ears to ring, but it got that hush. So you don't hear what's going on around you. And I said, oh, no, you don't need to have a concussion. You're the medic. And I sat up and I looked, I said, I got my fingers and toes. But suddenly my vision closed down and I was in darkness. And I heard a voice and had never heard a voice before. And the message that I got was, you have to be of these people to help them recover. And I'm going, maybe that means I had to fall down so I know what it is to be blown down. And as soon as I heard that, the vision opened up from a dark, small light spot. I should say it was dark, and then light, and I opened up and I got my vision back, and then I got my hearing back, and I got back to my feet, and I realized I had a sense of balance, And now I can hear people crying out. So I go into the building, do my job, and evacuate people to the evac hospital. And I'm working in medical care for the next 36 hours. I had never stayed awake 36 hours before, and I didn't realize it until finally a doctor pulled me aside. He said, "You've been here longer than me. Go to bed." And I'm still thinking about that voice that I heard that was deeper than mine, that was smoother than mine, that had none of the background sounds of the environment. Okay, so
Was it a male or a female voice?
it was a male,
Okay.
a
Mm.
very deep male
Have
voice.
you ever heard this voice since at any time?
Nope,
No?
nope,
Mm.
nope. But I put together what that message was about
Oh.
because um, I had to be, said I had to be one of them to help them. Well, uh, being in the medical field, you're always a helper. And although they had trained me as a photographer early on, and then afterwards, oh yeah, and when just before I retired, they retrained me as a paralegal. But the greatest part of my time was in medical services. But I'm getting sicker after the war, and I'm fighting for veterans and military benefits, saying, we were in a dirty battlefield, and some of us are getting sick, and this dirt and that dirt was there, and this chemical was there. And I was listened to more because I had already been trained as an environmental laboratory technician, had been already trained as an EMT. So my voice was uh, listened to more than others. I had gone to Congress and testified before them. I had done news reports, History Channel, and BBC and Democracy Now. And we got laws passed, what they call medical presumptions. Because if you were there, this dirt was here, and this probably made you sick. Now, as this is happening and I'm doing that, my body's not doing well. So it's having problems I had, and it was all idiopathic. I hate that word. It means we don't know, doctors, what's going on. But there was a point in time where I couldn't stand up straight. My sense of balance was completely gone. Then for a time there, I had intestinal problems, and nobody knew why. And after doing that for about 5 or 6 years, and I wouldn't have made it on my own. But my husband was my great support. He dressed me, set me up, get me where I had to go, or so what I could say. The mouth normally could go. I say normally because I did have one auto accident after I got out of the military, and I hit my chin and my throat, and I couldn't speak. I had to go to speech therapy after that. But as I had these health issues, I remember that this voice said I had to be part of it. And that's why veterans came to me to speak of their problems because they could identify with the problems that I had. Okay, finally, it got to a point where I couldn't really talk straight like I'm doing now. And I stopped working at that. And my husband was taking care of me full time. And I had just gotten out the military. Oh, the military tried to work with me. They tried to keep me as long as I could talk. But once I stopped talking, they said, "We're sorry, you did over 20 years. We're not going to give you a new contract." And then after the next event that comes into my life is that my husband gets diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Okay. Um, and out as He is starting his treatment. I'm recovering. I don't know why, but I'm doing better as he's getting worse. And but he always had a deep spirit with him. He says, I guess I could only carry you so far, and but I'll be waiting for you. And he always believed that this was not the end of life. We talked a lot about Nikola Tesla. We talked a lot about quantum science, and his death experience. It was, I mean, the only place I could talk to it was ions. Okay. Um, Medical doctors are saying he has like 9 months. It's like 3 months into this. And for some reason, me and him look at each other and say, and I go like, when you pass, I want to pass too. I do not want to be here in the world with you, without you. So we argued for a few minutes about that. He didn't have any particular signs that he was going to die the next day. So he talked me out of attempting suicide. And so we started talking about making funeral arrangements. Where you want to be buried? What type of activity do you want to have? Well, he wanted to have a color guard, and they would play Amazing Grace. Okay, so we wrote that down. I gave us medications. We had a good sleep that night, and then the next day when I got up to wake him up, he was doing poorly. And when I called his doctor, she says, "I told you to get to this. He just got to this poor quality quicker than we expected." And I said, "Oh man, you owe me a couple months." And what was really eerie was I started to hear the death rattles, and I'm going, "Oh, I've got to find some medication. You just can't go now." Well, in the next room, there's a TV set on, and we're not paying attention to the TV set. And I don't know what show it had been on. We hadn't paid attention to it for a while. And then suddenly he looks at the set, and I look towards it, and we hear some funeral being played. I think it was for a police officer, but Amazing Grace. And I turned to him. I said, "You're not going to go and be tapped out in Amazing Grace with before I can make arrangements." Now he was too weak to answer, but he nodded his head. And I knew this was going to be the moment. So I'm looking at him, and he's struggling to breathe. And then I looked towards the TV set when the song ended. And when I looked back at him, I saw that he had stopped breathing. And I said, "Well, you got the salute that you wanted. And I'm happy that you're not in pain anymore." And as I sat down next to him, really felt like he was on the other side, hugging me, hugging him. And I said, that was, nobody could tell me that coincidence that didn't happen.
I don't think there are any coincidences.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I call that my shared death experience. And in between my relationship with him, we had broken up once. And I had another man who was very dear to me. And out of the blue, he had prostate cancer. So I took him to the hospital because he was going for his first treatment. And he had a reaction to chemotherapy. And I'm there with him. And I'm going like, "You're not looking good." And doctors are going like, we can't figure out why he's doing so poorly. So I go, let's talk about the other life that you're going to. And I remember telling him, don't be afraid. There's nothing to fear. And I held his hand till he stopped breathing. And then I felt a mild tingle go up my arm. And I'm not supposed to feel that because I know he stopped breathing. So I said, well, I was meant to be here to lead you on. Okay. And then after my husband died, another close friend um, who came around and said, well, now that you're widow, maybe we could go out together. And we start going out. And then after, out of the blue, he gets diagnosed with renal failure. And he comes back. He says, I went to the doctor the other day. I wasn't feeling good. It turns out I'm in renal failure. And I said, oh, really? I said, do you know the job that I did last year? And he goes, what? I said, I had just been trained as a hemodialysis technician. So I can do your dialysis. And he goes, wow, that's peculiar. Okay. He also had other complications and had, and he died, and I was with him. And with him, when he passed, I heard a hum. Not from the room, not from instruments. I just heard a loud hum for the moment. And I also tried to comfort him at his passing. Okay, so what happened? So we're here in 2019. My youngest daughter turns to me. She's not turning to me. She's talking to a friend, and she goes, "Well, my mom's a black widow." And I said, "Why?" I'm listening. She says, "Why?" She says, "The friend says why?" She says, "Oh, well, she was with my dad when she died, and she told me how my grandmother had died, and then she had dated two other guys, and she walked them to their death, and so I'm calling her a Black Widow. And I didn't realize it until I heard the kids say that. So then in 2019, I'm going like, it made me go back and re-examine these experiences and what happened to them. Also, I wanted, people saying like, what do you do in your life? What do you want to do? Well, I physically can't do a lot because I'm not that strong. I still have health issues. But that's when I found out that I could be a deaf doula. So as I'm talking to irons, right now I'm still in training to be a deaf doula. Because if there's one thing I can do is to comfort people as they leave this life.
Yeah. I think you'd be wonderful at that. You already are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The universe put me in that position several times. And, it just didn't dawn on me. Yes, this is your new career field. Go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wonderful.
I've done it a couple of times for the VA, which is good because VA hospice, uh, um, they don't have that many staff in that field right now. It's beginning to expand. So when they can get more staff to come in and help them with that activity, they really do appreciate it.
Yeah, and that's the perfect synergy right there, right?
But I don't hear from uh, many people have heard how get gifts after this type of experiences. I don't see the auras that I used to as a child. Um, um, I really cannot say that I'm clairvoyant or clairsent. I don't have that. But you know something? I never say never. I don't have it today. And I have a sense that I'm 67, that I'm probably going to live to 80. This, I don't know where I feel, but I'm really kind of sure about that. Right. So anytime between now and then, it may happen, but it's just not with me yet.
Great.
And when you've had these things happen to you, you don't close the door.
So, after all these amazing experiences, what's the takeaway? What would you want to convey to the audience? What's your message?
Death is not the end. We are consciousness in a body, whether we have experiences of our conscious moving outside the body in this life, or we have the conscious moving back where we were at home. We are consciousness. And the greatest thing I want you to remember is to love yourself, which will aid you, love others, and to be of service.
Beautiful. Well, Venus, thank you so very much for your time and for sharing all this with us. It's very much appreciated. I have really enjoyed speaking with you. Thank you so much for sharing. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. You know, it the world is like a ripple, and whether it's a ripple of vibration, and I don't know who my voice will reach, but it will reach someone, just
Mm-hmm.
like somebody else's voice reached me.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about making those connections, and sometimes you're not even aware of them.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Well,
thank you for inviting me, and I look forward to listening to myself in the playback.
thank you so much for being my guest. I really, really enjoyed it. It's been a great experience.